The more education changes, we discover, different strengths and different desires and different abilities in how they learn and take information on.
The Adolescence series on Netflix, that was exposing of the generation gap in a way that potentially we've never had before. There's a future out there. It's a competitive world. We can't escape that. But do we pride ourselves on the percentages? No, we have to create them, and we see them. Happy children are the ones that tend to be successful, but it goes in that order.
Welcome, Martin. Welcome, Alex, to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much indeed, Ruth. It's brilliant to be here too. Really
No, I know that
exciting.
you're super busy, so I really appreciate it. So we've not met before. We talk about all things UK education. You've said that nothing is off limits, so let's see where the conversation takes us. You're both British, and you both had a UK education. Can we start there with you, Martin, just briefly? Were you educated, and how?
Yes, of course. I've reflected on this before, but I probably wouldn't be doing the job that I do had I not had a really positive experience of education myself. I was fortunate enough to be in a really lovely country primary school. I was in a county with the 11, 12 plus, which I was fortunate to pass, and so went to an all-boys grammar school, which overall was brilliant. There were some tough moments, and I prefer co-ed education. Certainly now I'm in it, I am a promoter of co-ed education, but I was in a school of 1,200 boys, and I was the second smallest of 140 boys in my year group. So when I joined, I was pretty daunted by the whole thing.
Smallest in terms of stature?
Size, yeah. And in boys' schools, that kind of makes too much of a difference. So I learned to find my way through all of that. And I was saying to Alex, actually, I was kind of in the choir, which wasn't a very cool thing to do in a 1,200 strong boys' school. But I had a kind of inner belief in who I was maybe back then. And it sort of got me through. And I learned to really appreciate what education could do for you. It was a very strict place. I think it was a bit unbendy, probably.
In which part of the country?
It was in Buckinghamshire.
Nice part of the country.
A lovely part of the country. My parents still there, so I still enjoy going back to visit. And, I was in a slipstream of lots of boys like me that knew they needed to do quite well academically. So I guess in a subtle way, it was probably slightly hot housing academically, but I've no complaints. I did okay academically, which enabled me to go on to university, get a degree, and then do the thing I love, which is to try and help young people become the best of themselves.
You went straight into teaching?
Pretty much, yeah. I went to university and thought, what shall I do? I took summers in between my university years to kind of do summer camps, and it tended to be with young people. I love children. I love people. And children are just more bendy than the older versions in my experience. And so I love that, and I love having an impact in their lives.
Yeah, more bendy.
Yeah.
Alex?
Yes. Well, I'm a director of music, and my music has always been part of my education. I was born in Edinburgh and went to a school, the Edinburgh Academy, an independent school in Edinburgh, that my parents picked and couldn't afford at the time, but picked it because it was strong for music. And then when I was quite little, my father got a job in the United States, and I went out to the United States with the family for 2 wonderful years in Boston. And became obsessed with all things American, and then came back to school in Scotland, and music became much more and more important to me, even though I also played rugby and loved to act and was clever enough to do okay academically.
So was music in your family?
Yes.
Okay.
So my mother's brother was a professional musician, and my father was a very talented violinist. Even though he was a doctor, he was an amateur violinist. And I was actually the 5th generation. I am the 5th generation of violinists in the family. So that means my father, his father, his father, his father were all violinists before me.
Do you have children?
I do, and I've got it wrong. My son plays the double bass.
Strings.
Yeah, I've done it wrong, yeah.
So you said your parents couldn't afford the independent school. So how did they afford it?
Well, they kind of cobbled it together,
yeah.
and I was lucky enough to be given a kind of a mini scholarship, and actually the fees back in the 80s were not quite as much as they are now.
Yeah, I just learned recently. I went to a really, really small girls' school in Essex, where I'm from, and I don't know why. Anyway, very, very recently, I learned that my grandfather actually had paid for my fees all the way through. Yeah. I literally learned that like last year. So, but I can remember they were like £360 a term. I'm giving my age away. Let's take a quick break to talk about something that can make all the difference for your child's educational journey. I'm thrilled to share that this episode is sponsored by Top Schools, your trusted partner in navigating the complex world of school applications. If you're aiming for a top independent school in the UK, Top Schools offers personalised consulting to ensure your child finds the very best fit with a guaranteed outcome. From identifying those best fit schools to crafting standout applications to invigilating the entrance exams, the expert team is with you every step of the way. Ready to take control of your child's future? Visit topschoolsadmissions.com or click the link in the show notes to learn more and book a consultation today. Use the code DESTINATION for 20% off. That code is DESTINATION for 20% off personalised support for entry into a top independent boarding school in the UK. Now, back to our conversation. We like to cover, obviously, we're working in the independent sector. We're all fans of it. If we're working in it, we have our own children in the sector. And we have to understand that we're very fortunate to be able to do that. I mean, do you have a view on state education? As do you have any comments on that?
Well, I guess I'm in a fairly good position to comment in the sense that I only knew state education, and actually I taught for 2 years in a state school.
However, the grammar school was the elitist part of state education at the time.
So I guess I saw that side of things, grammar school education, I guess, which kind of classified us in terms of our academic potential. But my first teaching job was in Guildford, Surrey, in a classic, typical, maintained, huge school. So I guess that also gave me, another view of education. It's just another one. And I've learned not to be political about any of it. When we've been drawn into some politics because of VAT and the rest of it. But my own passion for education belongs to no particular department, no particular school. I guess this school that I've been fortunate enough to work in has just given me the opportunities to do the kind of inspiring or part of the inspirational journey that I believe in. But I don't have any view on rights or wrongs. I wish every child had the opportunity that they do at a school like Wells, I guess.
Well, I think that's probably where everybody sits. I mean, I do remember that when I was spending more time in the UK, people would question why I'd sent my children to boarding school, like it was almost it was frowned upon in certain circles, right? But I think if we're honest, every parent would love the opportunity to be able to send their children to a school like Wells.
I've taught in state schools, and I kind of wish the state sector was better. But and I don't want this to sound flippant or anything, but when I've been in schools working with children, which I love to do in the state sector, because often they don't have the opportunities that you can get in the independent sector, especially with big classroom size of music and the facilities and the resources that they have. It's amazing how much joy you can spread very easily and very quickly when you drop in to be a kind of a visiting teacher in the state sector, and I love to do that, and I still do it now. But I'm just aware that there isn't the specialism possible. Yeah. So if you want to take a particular skill to the highest level at an early age, the state sector is much harder to create that opportunity. And for something like music, it's being funded less and less well. So if you're a talented musician, it's really worth trying to work out a way to get into the independent sector, like it or not. That I think that's the only place that you can hope to achieve something within a school setting.
Well, let's stick with music, because Wells Cathedral School is obviously very well renowned for music, but it's not a one-trick pony, right? Obviously, some people I think have that misperception that a school is very good at one thing and therefore it's not good at the other things. Well, let's start with music, Alex. As head of music.
Well, you said it's not a one-trick pony, and I think actually that is what makes Wells a wonderful music school, is that it is not a one-trick pony. There are music schools where one could be considered, if you went there, it's more like a music hothouse. And Wells has that incredible quality, but one of the great things about Wells is that it also teaches pupils to be great citizens, because on top of music, they're doing sport, they're doing wonderful academics, they're doing art, drama, and they're becoming all-round people in a way that none of the other specialist schools in the UK can really
Your
do.
musicians are involved in all of those other areas as well.
They can be as much or as little as they wish to.
And practically speaking, though, do they get involved in all
Yes,
the
they
other
do.
things?
Yes, they do. Yeah,
Because you encourage that.
Yeah, so the school is about 700, of which 200 or so are there because of the music, and another 100 or so are involved in music and get inspired by the 200 amazing musicians.
Right.
But the 200 amazing musicians are equally inspired by people who are wonderful at French or wonderful at sciences, and the choices of A-levels that our musicians do, and it's not just music. It's a very, very broad selection.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, I mean, what's the connection between a cathedral? Because we've got a few cathedral schools in the United Kingdom. How does it work?
It's a really good point. I mean, our relationship with the cathedral is a really important one. It breathes a kind of heartbeat into our school. So there's something environmental about it. We all walk down what is a beautiful, very old street called Vicar's Close, kind of 1300s and something.
Where the monks' houses were.
Exactly. It's like an artery to the school. So physically, it's kind of really quite impressive and gives a kind of umbrella of philosophical charge over the whole school, which I think is really helpful. It is a spiritual school, a philosophical school, and it gives young people a chance to think of things that are larger than themselves. But there's also some practical things. So we have governors that work for the cathedral that help us in the school. Our choristers are very much a part of both of those things. I mean, that's probably the most clear practical link, I would say, the choristers. And we have 35 phenomenal choristers singing like a job. I mean, for 25 hours a week, that's what they do, and they walk in down with their robes on between the school and the cathedral every single day, sometimes several times a day, and they bring both of those things together in quite a powerful way, and lots of other choirs that therefore straddle the two. So I guess it's environmentally quite impactful. It's a beautiful building, and that helps us, I think, just to breathe a bit.
I mean, Wells is I live very close to Wells when I'm in the UK, and there are two types of boarding schools. There's what do you call the campus school, where it's all happening in one contained area, and then what I call like a city school or a town school. So you see the students walking from different buildings, or it's very much integrated into the community. So you've mentioned how it's integrated with the cathedral, and then you also mentioned how you go into the state schools and that. So I'm interested to understand a bit more about how it's integrated into the community. It's a small town, small city, actually.
Do you want to hear this one?
Yeah, I'm very happy to say we are so focused on looking out at our school. It's the headmaster in an open day will say we're not a cloistered, walled garden school where people have to kind of climb on someone's shoulders to look in and wonder what we're about. We are a very open school, partly because of the way we've been born. We weren't built as a school. It started in 909, which is incredible. So 1100 and something years as a choir school, and it's just built, and the buildings have kind of grown, and so there's lots of areas of kind of gaps and openness on the site. It would be hard to actually drop a net over the site because it's kind of sprawling, and therefore reaches out physically into our community and into the city. So I feel like we look out as much as we look in, and we're a very community-hearted school, and therefore keep all of that openness between us and the rest of the Wells community.
So do you have like programs where you're bringing the children from other schools in, or your children are going out, or other residents?
Programs is an interesting word for it. So musically, we send our pupils into local schools to do musical workshops. So our pupils are kind of learning how to be wonderful citizens with their great gifts of music, and also then we have this amazing ability to bring schools into a huge space like the cathedral, or a less big space like our wonderful Cedars Hall, which is a kind of 250 to 300 seater sort of chamber concert hall. And we run workshops there. So the answer is yes, we do both. We go out and we invite in. We like to share.
And do you have lots of recitals and performances that the other outsiders, for want of a better word, are invited into?
I'll go with this. Yeah. So yes, and on multiple levels. So at the very top level, we have a series actually that I have just started to curate called the Maestro series, and it invites the very famous, very greatest artists from around the UK, around Europe, around the world actually, to come to Cedars Hall to do recitals. And tickets for the under 19s are free for that, and we've got sponsorship, and in order we can actually afford to make that possible. So in a hall for fewer than 300, to have free tickets is not a sensible thing to do unless we have financial help. So we've got those concerts that are available for our youngsters to just experience some of the great music up close and personal, and the rest of the community come in and help us with that too. And that's just one level. Then we've got concerts that involve pop music. So we use the mayor's concert. So the mayor of Wells helps us put on a concert each year for our own pop stars, but also the pop stars for the local schools, the Blue School and Strode College. And it's a kind of joint venture. And that's always well attended by the local community.
And you're not far from Glastonbury, so maybe you could invite some of the the other A-listers.
We may have done that.
Oh,
yeah. The Evis family, who have been wonderful supporters of the school over the years, do come to some of our concerts.
Did their children go to the school? They did.
Am I allowed to say that they do?
It's Googleable. Everything's Googleable. I think I did Google that.
Emily, who now runs the Glastonbury Festival, she went to she's an Old Wallensian, and her children are also at the school. So there's a good family link there.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's, I mean, obviously different genres of music. I mean, we always think of, I think of you, head of music. You said that you play violin, but, are all genres of music celebrated at Wells?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, yes, I'm a violinist, but I also love singing. Martin and I were harmonising to the Beatles earlier on, just for fun in the middle of Hong Kong. Exactly. And we have a wonderful jazz programme. We have singer-songwriters. So we also help people write their own songs, but also compose classical music. I think there's nothing we don't do, actually, musically.
I'm the least musical person that you'll ever meet. I mean, I appreciate music. I worked in the music business when I was younger, but not musical myself. But I do appreciate the music. I'll have to come by. Please let me know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of our most remarkable events, we call it Event in the Hall, and it's just pupil-led. So it's like a
mini Glastonbury.
Because you just touched on Glastonbury. That's what made me think. And they audition themselves, and on 2 separate stages for about 10 cumulative hours, our pupils are on stage playing, singing, to a huge audience, just enjoying it, and the proceeds go to one of our charities. But you stand back and you just think about that kind of opportunity and engagement, and it is staggering and brilliant and organic, and all led by them. And
that's the important thing. They organise it themselves.
It's them, the prefect of the school, kind of run the whole thing and lead it, and we kind of step back and guide or answer questions if we need to. But that's the kind of opportunity that we believe in.
Yeah. Why would parents be considering Wells Cathedral School if they have children like me that are totally not musical? You must meet parents like you say, not even enjoying it. They don't play, they don't sing anything. You must have.
I'll have a go at answering that, partly because I can call myself a non-musician in the sense that I didn't reach any particular heights at school myself in music. I loved sports particularly. But I still loved music. I took on a few instruments, but not very well. And I was in the choir, and I still love to sing. Not brilliantly, but I sing, as we did on the escalator, singing to the Beatles not long ago. But therefore, I think I'm quite qualified to say what an enormous benefit having such brilliant musicians in a school has to all of us, whether or not you count yourself as musical or not. I mean, you walk around the school, and it just kind of exudes from every open window. And we sit in assemblies where you have incredible musician after incredible musician delighting us all, and it brings a kind of atmosphere, a peace, a strength, a variety, or a colour, and it allows us to respect other people for what they do. Again, and because respect lies at the heart of everything that we do, we see music as such a way of communicating and bringing life to the school. So I can thoroughly recommend the music to everyone.
And yes, music is important, and it's world level educating on music at Wells. But the respect goes both ways. So yes, the musicians are respected, but the musicians respect the great sports stars. They get involved in things that are not just music. So they'll get involved in the theatre, and there's a mutual admiration, and more than half of the school is not a specialist musician. So they kind of rub along beautifully together, don't they?
And therefore it gives everything a lift. Because if you take the drama that we've just done, a production of West Side Story, which is amazing, you've got your own pit. You don't need to hire anything in. You've got these incredible musicians adding enormous value to the production. And some of our pupils have composed the music for the production. So if you pull that all together, you have something quite special, and that's what we are fortunate to live with every day.
And there are plenty of musicians who aren't specialist musicians as well, if that makes sense.
Recreational musicians.
Yes, who love it, and nobody feels threatened, or it's just a lovely atmosphere.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it's interesting because you're leading, you're taking care of pastoral care and extracurricular and safeguarding. How do you see the link between music and, for want of a better word, well-being?
That's a really good question, because our musicians work extremely hard. And so we are very aware of the pressure, not that we particularly place on them, because young people press their own pressure on themselves, we tend to find. But just making sure they've got good tutors that oversee their program is one thing, because they can be phenomenally stretched. And our young people are pretty ambitious. They want the best for themselves and for what they're trying to achieve. So we are there watching, just making sure they don't overstretch themselves, I guess, with the amount of music that some of them do, because for some of them it's like a day job. I mean, they are practicing hard during the day, they've got concerts, and because there's so many opportunities at Wells, it's too easy for them to get trapped in a cycle of taking on so much, like kids in a sweet shop, but it's not necessarily for their benefit, and they need to sleep well, have some time to themselves, have some time for their relationships and so on. So I think that's probably the main area. But of course, music works against that by being so brilliantly inspiring for them that they enjoy it. So we often find ourselves slightly conflicted by their smiles on their faces saying, I can't do any more, but I'm enjoying it, sir.
That's more where I was coming from with the music. I mean, as someone who I appreciate music but don't play. I mean, if it's woven into the fabric of the culture of the school, then does it have some sort of uplifting effect?
I think, can I just talk a little bit about hymn practice? Yeah. So once every now and then, the whole school will be in the cathedral, and I or one of my colleagues will lead whole school singing, whether it be a hymn that's coming up or a Christmas carol if that's coming up. So not top level stuff, but the whole school is singing. And not everyone is a singer, not everyone is a musician, not everyone's that keen to be there. But what is really interesting is after the hymn practice, which might take 20 minutes, and we'll get people making silly noises and all sorts of things in the amazing acoustic of the cathedral, without question, you see people leaving the building with a smile, including the ones who aren't musicians. In fact, maybe more the ones who aren't musicians.
I'd agree.
And it's because they've been breathing, they've got their bodies moving first thing in the morning. Singing releases these incredible endorphins. You just don't tell them that anything is uncool, and they'll think it's not uncool, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. But I think you were saying earlier, being a chorister when you were younger, I think I'm pleased to say that being a nerd is somewhat cooler now than it used to be, right? I think the kids are much more respectful of difference.
Accepting of everything.
Yes. I just lost my thread. You were saying about even if you don't sing, then can anyone learn to sing? I
think so. I'm a subscriber of the theory that there's no such thing as being tone deaf, and I think that there's more to singing than just singing. There's learning how to breathe, learning how to release your body, and learning how to kind of express yourself. And in time, everyone can join in, and as long as nobody's kind of looking at you in a kind of confused or disgusted way next door at whatever level you're at that point, then the confidence can grow.
Maybe this old dog can learn a new trick.
Well, you said you were in the music business before. I'm sure you're much more musical than you say you are.
A&R, so completely different. I want to talk more about, I mentioned the word well-being. It's not the best word that I could have used, but that this whole thread of pastoral care. So being a child nowadays, you're parents, right? Are you both parents?
Both of us are parents.
How old are your children?
Martin, do you want to say it?
I have 4 children, all go to school. They are currently 11, 13, 15 and 17, 2 bookend boys and the girls in between. Okay. So, we both, I think, benefit from having children at the school. I mean, that's one thing I could talk about. It really allows you to see it from a second pair of eyes that's really helpful, because I'm a parent as well as a teacher at the school. And so that's a real benefit, I think.
Yeah, no, let's come back to that. And you also,
My children are George, who's 13, and Freya, who's nearly 11.
right.
And neither of them are specialist musicians.
Okay.
George is an
One plays
all-rounder.
double bass.
He does play the double bass, but just as a kind of normal musician. He's very good, but he
Yes.
doesn't practice hugely.
Right.
But he's very good. But my daughter's an actress. She's a performer, and and Wells is brilliant for both of them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did want to ask the previous head that was in here, actually, working in the school in a senior leadership position and being a parent, how does that play into what you
I'd
do?
love to answer that. It's fascinating. I've been waiting for the chance to teach my own child, which I did last year. I'm an English teacher by trade. And my third oldest child, Mimi, was in my class. And because of who she is, she not only allowed me to enjoy the experience, but allowed me to flourish. I thoroughly enjoyed that class with her being in it. And she's very happy to put her hand up and call me Mr. Ashton rather than Dad, although I wouldn't have minded, and I'm sure the other children wouldn't mind it. But it's an incredible privilege to do what we do whilst living in the same community as our own children. I get to see their concerts and their sports matches, and just high five them in between classes and things like that, without making it seem OTT, or without any kind of specialist treatment. If anything, we're tougher on our own children, aren't we? It's a bit like when we referee a football match and we're tougher on the side that we're with.
Yeah.
But it is a total privilege to have our own children in the school, and for them to have the benefits of something we fight for with such pride and such passion, and for them to come back with smiles on their faces because of some of the things that we're working on as a school. So that's also a joy.
And I've got quite a nice relationship with my son, who plays the double bass. So when I'm conducting an orchestra that George is in,
He's good enough to be in the orchestra.
Well, he's good enough to be in one of the orchestras. But yeah, he and I will actually have there's actually a sense of humour between the two of us, which can be really helpful actually for the whole orchestra.
But does it change your role? Being a parent, how does that feed into what you do as a head of music, what you do as a head of pastoral at all?
Not at all, if
No.
I'm honest. No,
Okay.
I mean, I do what I do, and I'm sure Alex would say the same. It just sometimes gives you actually a wider angle lens with which to look at everything, and in the way that you shape the school moving forward, because you hear their comments, they're open, they're honest, they're children, and they say what they think. And so it's helpful to get an honest view sometimes from a child, where you're getting the truth, when you're eating your baked beans on toast on a Saturday lunchtime with them or something. So it's not direct as such, but it definitely helps me get a really honest reflection of life through their eyes.
And I think being a teacher and a parent helps me understand how children are developing. So maybe things that you pick up from one child, you think, oh, hold on, maybe that's what's going on in my son's life, and that can actually help parenting, and maybe vice versa as well.
And for when you're looking at issues, for example, our use of mobile phones in the school. I mean, you've touched on well-being, and there is a link. I think we've all accepted that now, between the mental health epidemic that we've been seeing amongst young people, and things like smartphone, the digital age. And so having 4 of my own children, I can kind of, if you like, informally interview at home and say, what do you think if we decided to do it this way? It's really helpful, off the record, honest advice and opinion. So yeah, they're quite useful as sounding boards sometimes as well.
Research subjects.
Exactly.
And actually, hats off to Wells, because I know that my children don't ever feel that being my child is a problem for them, or they haven't felt that yet.
Well, I think that's something that's also changed, because back in my day, the teachers' children or the heads' children they had a tough time, I think.
As far as I know, it doesn't happen at Wells like that. So it's really supportive.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the sort of the culture. I mean, if we try to recalibrate, and we're not thinking it only as a music school, then what is Wells Cathedral School?
I think that's a great question. I mean, I think I would advocate Wells Cathedral School, even without its specialism in music, is a really honest way to start this conversation.
As would I. Yeah.
I actually do quite a lot of travelling, bizarrely, although I've been at one school for 25 years, and I can't believe I have, but I have. I still learn a lot and see a lot. And I still come back to Wells thinking, this is the place I would choose to work at, and this is the place I would choose for my own children
Do
to
you
go to.
visit lots of other boarding schools?
Yes, just in the nature of our jobs. I mean, I guess I coached sport a lot for the first 18 years of my career at Wells, and so just saw a lot of school sport, and you pick up a lot on, don't you, in terms of atmosphere and community and the way they do things. And I'm fortunate enough to go to sort of committees and meetings quite a lot, where I meet 10 or 20 sometimes of the Southwest schools, certainly through my safeguarding largely. So I meet with other teams of safeguarding leads, because we want good practice and we want to help each other and do the best we can. So I guess I get a good sense of other schools, and I still love Wells Cathedral School. And so it's not about the music, although music is a big part of that. It's just such a well-rounded school. You know, there aren't many opportunities you can't get if you look for them. It's a mid-sized school, which is nice because it's big enough for a diversity and opportunity, but small enough, about 700 in total, about 550 of which are in the senior school, but small enough so that no child is lost. And I think that's really key, that we value every child.
I mean, I talk to a lot of boarding school heads and senior leaders, and they all say the right things, you know, like the pastoral care is excellent, the super curricular, they're all getting, you know, and it's really hard for parents to, if they were to visit Wells, like what would they see and hear and smell that you think might be a differentiator as opposed to other schools?
I'll start, because you've been at the school a long time, Martin. And
How long have you been there?
I've been 3 years now.
Okay,
So I can still remember that and I knew I was coming as director of music, but I also wanted to make sure for my children that it was going to be a fantastic place. And I was struck immediately by the fact it's the family atmosphere. So my children don't board because they live at home, but through the day they'll pile into boarding houses. The atmosphere is inclusive for the day pupils as well as the boarders. Everyone mucks in. There's toast and chocolate spread and all. Always toast, yes. But my son loves, you know, when I am a bit late to pick him up or something, he it's the boarding house that he goes to in order, to spend more time with his boarding mates. But it's the family atmosphere. You know, the whole place is just so
can you
inviting and
define that
welcoming.
a bit more? What do you mean by family atmosphere?
Everyone looks out for themselves. The community is a large one, but it's small enough or not large so that people don't know everyone. And I think everyone looks out for each other. And that comes from actually the governors, who are more involved, I think, than any other school that I've worked in. The senior management team, which I'm lucky enough to sit on. And then the staff. Everyone knows all the estates teams. Everyone knows all the gardeners. The whole community is really, really close. And it's it's lovely to. I enjoy talking to the estates team when they're coming to fix a door or something, which means that we don't have soundproofing in that room for a bit, and we'll make each other coffee and stuff. There's just a feel that everyone enjoys working in the same place.
Yeah, I think I know what you're trying to describe, but I would argue that you would hope for that in almost any mid-sized or small to large boarding school, wouldn't you?
I think you would hope for it.
Yeah.
But it's actually happening at Wells, whereas previous places has touched on it and has had it sometimes.
You've worked in quite a number of different schools.
I've worked in a few, and they've been great.
And so you would say that family atmosphere has been lacking in some of the other schools?
Wells is not. I would say Wells has it more obviously because it doesn't feel like a corporate environment. It's not. Martin, do you sort of join in on it? Do you know what I'm saying? It's kind of There's a feeling not of the buildings, for example. Some of the old buildings feel like you're educating in a kind of a house, a grand house, but a kind of a lovely, quirky place that you would actually find charming, rather than just going to the next classroom. Does that make,
It does, and it's really hard to measure.
Yeah.
We see what we see, and then we try and work out why.
Exactly.
And that's what we're trying to discuss. And the why is actually quite hard to put your finger on, but we know it because we hear it. And the people I've heard endlessly just say it's just such a friendly, caring place. Respect and values. I remember coming from my interview, and I was just staggered by the relationships, the warmth between the pupils and between pupils and staff. And I thought, that is different. That's something I've never seen before. And of course, that happens in lots of other good schools, but there does seem to be something quite special about Wells. I think the environment is something. It is a staggeringly beautiful school. The environment, I talked about the cathedral influence, the fact that it actually feels like a village. It calls itself a city. It's because it's got a cathedral. It's actually a village. And we're kind of away from big cities. I think that has an impact as well. And as you say, these beautiful old buildings that create this really lovely non-corporate feel. And the fact that it's 2 to 18, I mean, they mix with each other. It's a vertical school. So from 2 to 18, they are in with each other, on the same site, working with each other and learning, how to work with younger people. Our prefects mentor younger children in the prep school. They sit with them and they read. So there's some practical things we do to encourage and enhance that as well. We share the same facilities. We're not a hugely affluent school. We don't have the best facilities in the world, although they're very good. So we have to do a lot of compromise and work together to achieve what we do as well. I think that helps achieve that kind of family feel.
And I think music is actually quite important for that. If you've got sports teams, which of course Wells does, and they're excellent, they're all done in year groups or gender and music is one of the only things where you can educate an 11-year-old in the same group as an 18-year-old, and they can start interacting. And I think that's incredibly special, and actually something I'm glad I've articulated now, because I think I probably take that for granted sometimes. That you're educating people, whether they're 11 or 18, and they're teaching each other, just by dint of being together in that environment.
It's a good point. And you mentioned that the majority of the students are senior in the senior school, and also want to ask a bit about the international contingent as well, with parents listening from all over the world. So tell us a little bit about where do the international students come from, and particularly how do you support them to integrate?
That's a really good question and so important. I've been here long enough to remember the times when we didn't have that many overseas pupils. It was largely UK pupils. And I guess around 2005, 2008, we started to see more interest and wanted to expand because it gives opportunity.
What was happening around 2005, 2008 that made that happen?
I just think that we were probably a bit slower than some other schools to realise the impact that overseas pupils can have. And so I think we just had to work a bit harder at that and reach out a bit more. And so we started to do that and started to see the positive impact it can have. To give you some numbers, we're about 50% boarding and day in the senior part of the school. And I would say about 50% of the boarders are from overseas. So we've got about 120 of our 250 boarding from overseas. The majority are from Asia, Hong Kong and China, but quite a few as well from Europe as well, particularly German students that come to us. I think overall we've got something like 20 nationalities represented, which I think is a really good opportunity for all of our school pupils to kind of see that as a representative or a microcosm of the world. And when we are preparing global citizens here, that is our job. I say often we're not trying to make children be good at being at school. The whole point of them being at school is prepare them for the big journey after 18. So if you've shared your room with people from other countries, you've heard their accents, their habits, the way they do things, you've really started to open your mind and be more tolerant. And again, it goes back to respect, which is what we said several times. So I think it's a massive benefit.
You said quite a number from Asia. Why is that? How did that happen? It's just that they tell all their friends and then they recommend
I think it is to an extent word of mouth. As I said, we're not a massively resourced school, so we haven't got people flying around the world. It's like ironic because we're sitting here right now in Hong Kong. We've been able to do this. I've only been out here twice, my second time. But I think some of it is word of mouth. I think having a USP helps. I mean, we fly the music flag because we have a specialism in music. That definitely has an impact. I would say, and Alex will say, the majority of our boarding are here to some degree because of music. So that helps us because we get a reputation for that. But actually,
and the Asians do music extremely well. So it's a kind of natural fit, I think. And Wells also has a specialist maths.
It's compulsory to learn an instrument from the age of 3.
So Wells does things that the Asian community are good at.
Aligns.
It aligns nicely. And we have a specialist maths program as well, which is a kind of, that's another calling card for international students.
But equally, we can't be naive to the fact that there's a world out there and they won't necessarily have heard of Wells Cathedral School unless we promote it, and we want them to be part of something we believe in. So we can do that with full integrity. We're very fortunate because we work in a school that we can full-heartedly promote with it being so honest because it feels real and true to us.
What are some of the challenges that maybe international students, maybe even particularly Asian students, but not necessarily, what sort of challenges would they face in integrating? I mean, Wales is in the, I mean, it's a very, very heart, as a quintessential English city. It could feel quite different when they first land. And so how do you help them to integrate?
It's a really good question. And I find myself staggered by how well they do. I kind of look at them now that I've done the 14-hour flight from Heathrow to Shanghai to Hong Kong. I can see what they're going through. We're still trying to adjust.
And they're doing that multiple times.
And they did. Yeah. So I mean,
they do it like taking a bus, honestly.
They are so malleable, so open, so capable.
Yes.
And that's the first thing I would say. But also, it would be naive of us to assume that it was like riding a bike. It was that easy, especially the first time they do it. They are traveling a quarter of the way around the world, away from their family and friends and what they know, and joining a whole new community. So we don't take that for granted.
And not in their first language, which is
right,
which is also really important.
So we think about where they're placed in terms of their boarding and who they share with. We buddy.
Do you mix them up, or do you?
Yeah.
But is there a balance though? You want them to have a few. Yes. But not too many.
Spot on. Exactly balanced. What we don't want is groups of people who therefore are pulled away from the main part of the community. And actually, they really want to speak and learn English anyway. So we're kind of, we're working with that. But yeah, there's a balance in terms of who they share with. And we want them to be open-minded and all that and meet new kinds of people. But we buddy them up with, pupils that have been there for longer so they can help them physically. I mean, if you're walking around with a map going to the wrong room, it's quite stressful being late to maths. No one wants to be told off because they're 10 minutes late just because they got lost. Those kind of things
One of the schools, I forget which one, they actually call them shepherds. These are the people who are literally responsible for getting them from one building to the other, because it's complicated, isn't it? It can be.
So it must be slightly daunting and must be slightly apprehensive.
But we also have we have English lessons as well for pupils that may need extra help,
right?
And then the tutor system as well. I think helping international students to learn how to communicate and not to be scared to ask for help is a big one.
Yeah.
And I think we just get more and more experience at spotting quietness and identifying that might be fine or it might not be fine.
I think that's right. And I think that the goal of all this is our boarding houses. I mean, you just said, how do they integrate? Well, when you join a house that is, in our case, 30, 35 strong as boarding houses, that's quite a small house, but it really does therefore become a family really quickly, and our phenomenally caring house staff just pull all that together in no time. And so those children within a week are usually beaming and found friends and found their purpose, and working with each other. And because they're vertical houses, they've got role models older as well as be able to look at some younger ones and look after them in terms of the family that we've described. So I think our boarding houses are important.
I mean, I'm sure at least 80% of the time you think you want it all to be super smooth and it's perfectly, they integrate. But let's be honest, there are times, and I'm sure that you've experienced individual students that they've had a little bit of a more rocky time of it. Can you just tell us a bit about one or two stories and what happened?
Crikey, I've probably got far too many in my head, but I would just say, of course, there's rocky moments, and we certainly don't want to ever assume that every child's life is perfect and goes well. In fact, I think that's dangerous, because when it goes wrong, who do you turn to if you think that people will only, see you smiley and happy all the time? Mental health is something that we've already touched on, and well-being, and we are seeing some real difficulties in this generation, and some of them are finding that hard for all sorts of reasons. And I can't, I won't pick up a particular case, but some of them have tough backgrounds. They've not had things easy. Often we see the children that struggle the most have had, some kind of difficulty at home or with their parents. And so the roots are not as healthy as some others, and they need real help, which is where our pastoral system comes in. And that's why we have a kind of multi-layered system to cope with those children that are just finding life really hard. Emotionally based avoidance is a big thing at the moment with attendance from schools, and we know that. And we have children who are struggling to get into school, who are down or just finding it really hard to get in to be motivated.
So emotionally based avoidance means children they're challenged and they're just zoning out and pretending that those challenges don't exist.
Exactly. And some of them don't even know why necessarily. That the mind is an incredibly powerful and complex thing. But that's why good schools like ours are working hard to make sure we've got excellent counselling provision and the kind of caring staff that will notice that. and spot that child that doesn't want to say it, because that takes confidence and openness, and say, do you need some help? What else can we do for you to make sure that we can get you into a healthier place? Because we know that happy children are successful children, and that's why happiness always comes above success.
You've been at the school for about 20 years, you said, doing pastoral and other things, but you must have seen just an exponential increase in, we've all been talking about mental health so much more. And so the children have the language to say that, whatever they're feeling, and validating that it's okay not to be okay and all of that. I mean, what's your view on, briefly, on some of this?
It's been an area we've been watching with concern for some years as the numbers have increased, and COVID definitely accelerated some of those symptoms. And so it's been really helpful to have, there's been an expert called Jonathan Haighton from America who's written the Anxious Generation book, which has become really popular. And I spoke to staff about that at Inset 2 or 3 years ago, because it was really helpful to get a kind of global perspective and really good numbers and research, rather than us all having our own individual view on something. And so that's helped. And so I think one thing we've done is kind of take away some of the potential for social media to impact their lives. That's for sure. So we've worked hard on hidden phone policy, so they can actually engage and be in the present and concentrate and get more sleep. Those things are vital.
Hidden phone policy?
Well, we don't allow year 7 to 11 pupils to have their phones with them from the start of the school day to the end. That's been over the last few years. We've managed to push that system through. Our sixth form do, because they need to become the adults they're going to be when they're 18 plus. But we constantly look at that. There's no complacency. But that's one area. I mean, Alex has touched on the family values.
Yeah.
And if you're, part of a culture where you are respected, you're open, people are kind to each other, and there's specific support where they need them, we tend to be able to find ways through all of that.
And I think it's hugely positive that we're now living in a generation where it is okay to not be okay. When I was younger, it was I didn't have a particularly smooth time, but I didn't talk about it much. And I'm so grateful now that if I was a child again now, it would be fine.
I have mixed feelings on this. I think obviously to some degree it's right that children need to be able to express that they're having certain feelings, but does it also validate that every challenge it's just okay to sort of ducking out of things and changing tack, or citing anxiety as an excuse for this or for that?
The changing tack one is a really interesting one, because I think that is a pressure that sometimes children can feel that they are driving themselves or being driven down a route that they don't feel comfortable on. And I think, going back to the family atmosphere of Wells, I think we support that and create a good balance of, you need to dig in for a little bit longer just to make sure, or actually we can support you because we can see that what you're getting at is actually potentially a better path for you. And then communicating that with parents, communicating that with other members of staff becomes something that I know Wells does extremely well.
Allowing them to cope is really important.
Yeah.
Life is hard. I mean, they need to learn how to build their resilience muscles. Yeah. And so we need to be honest with them sometimes and say, I think you can get through this, and I think you can cope. We're here if you need help, but we're not going to make your path too easy for your own sake. Otherwise, you're going to struggle when you're on your own in the real world.
That is exactly what I was getting at. But then I was listening to something on the way here that, just dealing with self-limiting beliefs. If a child is going through something and they're saying, well, I can't do that, and feels validated in saying, I can't do that because I have anxiety, then just telling them that they can isn't going to work, is it?
No, exactly. And anxiety is part of normal life as well.
Right.
There are levels, and we get to know the people that really have something significant and need some work from professionals outside the school. But most of day-to-day struggles, it is really hard being a young person. And we look them in the eye and say, expect it to be hard. It's the first line of Scott Peck book, isn't it? That's the road less traveled, that says, first thing to accept is that life is really hard. Once you've done that, it doesn't feel so hard anymore. And there's something about perspective in that that's really important.
Yeah.
Try not to tell them that it doesn't get any easier when they're growing up.
I've just had this conversation with my daughter. She's in first year of university. Yeah. It's like, well, when you get to work, guess what?
Yeah. It's just
That's
different.
when
It's a different level of challenges.
Yeah.
But I do that is what I was getting at, Martin. Thank you for articulating what I couldn't. But I feel that in some schools, in some cultures, in some families, the children are just being allowed to,
I think there's a bit of that, and that's where our wisdom and judgment comes in. When say, actually, you just need to go into school today and you'll be fine. Other times I say, I can see there's something significantly wrong here.
Which leads on from another conversation I was having the other day. I mean, as a teacher or just a normal classroom teacher, right? They have to be very, very skilled in reading the children. There's a lot of psychology involved, isn't there?
I said at inset about last year, I said, I do not underestimate what we're asking of you these days. You have to be everything to them. We're asking you to spot the changing in behaviour, to be an amateur psychologist, to know when there's a safeguarding issue brewing, to see them one-to-one, to give them extra support if they need it. Endless amounts of challenge now being a teacher. You ask them to wear so many hats. And so we need to equip them to wear those hats and not throw them into a comfort zone that they find really hard, especially if they're new teachers. They've got a degree and they're expected sometimes to be the parent and everything to our young people, and their expectations are therefore high. So we've got to acknowledge that and give them the right kind of support as well.
It's complicated, isn't it?
Well, everybody learns in different ways, and the more education changes, we discover different strengths in different pupils and different desires and different abilities in how they learn and take information on. And a teacher has to be aware of all of those things, and it's almost like you're teaching in multiple ways at the same time.
We talked a lot about the pupils, but you obviously, so I find independent education a bit of a strange dynamic, because the parents are paying the bills, but your customer, in a sense, is not the parent, it's the pupil. I don't know if you would agree with that.
Sometimes.
We do agree with that.
Yeah,
That's a really interesting dynamic. And that's why we talk about the triangle of openness and communication.
Yeah.
Our priority and our passion is for young people. And if we're doing that bit right, we're likely to be pleasing the parents that are paying the bills. But there are times when that bit doesn't work, when it gets fractured, or when a parent doesn't agree with something the school has said or done. I mean, I'm the person that, along with the head, once I get to this point, has to suspend and give out discipline. And that doesn't always go very easily, because people don't like to be challenged sometimes. None of us do. And it takes real humility to say, I've got something wrong and I want to become a better person. And sometimes we make mistakes. We're fallible. Yeah. We're human beings. We've got busy, challenging jobs. And so it just requires all the people in that loop to be open, honest, humble, actually, and modest about what we're trying to achieve, which is the very best for that young person. But we do encourage communication. We don't put up barriers to parents. Parents can get hold of us pretty easily, sometimes too easily maybe, yep. But I'd rather it was that way round than them feeling that they could not have an input in the lives of their children, who they know the best and they love them, and they're putting an enormous amount of financial work into it. And we acknowledge that.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about being life is complicated, being a teenager is complicated, but being a parent is also very, very complicated. What are some of the conversations that you're having with parents these days? Is it the sorts of issues that we've been touching on so far today? And
I think one of them is definitely the digital age thing, because our generation did not have to face what they do. When we say, when I was their age, I often stop parents and say, well, actually, you weren't their age.
But increasingly, the parents are now born in the 90s. That's a scary thought.
It is. And especially when you're teaching children of people you taught, which is in the position I find myself in. I find myself quite old.
The internet was, 95, 96. Yeah. So some of our younger parents really did grow up with the internet.
Yeah, they did. They're still struggling to navigate their way through the changes, though. And I would say even in the last 5 years, we've seen huge changes in technology and the way young people are using them. So I'd say that's one thing. I don't know if you caught the Adolescence series on Netflix, which I talked about at Inset recently. That was exposing of the generation gap in a way that potentially we've never had before, where the older generation said, actually, there's a gap. I just don't know. I've lost control over my children. It's more than just a lack of a bit of independence, which children all need. It feels like I don't understand it anymore. And there were some hard-hitting news articles all about that. So we need to try and understand and be curious and work with that and bridge the gap.
And most parents at Wells seem cheerful about that. They like the support that we as teachers can give them as parents, actually. And you talk about the triangle.
Yes,
in general, it works really well.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I mean, I would totally understand as a parent, and you're probably doing this for the first or maybe the second time, but you're experts. You've been working with children for dozens of years. I did catch the adolescence series. I didn't get too into the weeds of all the follow-up stuff. I mean, it was a drama. It was not a documentary.
And that's an interesting point. There have been lots of articles saying people have gone too far.
Required viewing
and
for
why politicians getting so involved in something that was a drama, it was fictitious. But I think it was some of the principles of what grabbed people probably, and maybe create a little bit of social panic. Probably. I heard a really interesting radio show when lots of people were phoning in saying what they thought about it. And there were some people saying, what don't we know that we should know, kind of question.
What's your view on that? You're raising, smart young people to be independent and resilient, and
yeah, I think we need to chill out personally a little bit about it. Is my honest view. Every generation's raised things that their parents don't understand or didn't understand. So we should take this stuff seriously and respect it, but not get into a cycle of panic and locking our children away and not letting them have any access to devices. I think that would be the wrong move. We've got to tread carefully. Just openness. I would say the most important thing is openness and conversation. And then they respect where they're coming from, and you can work together on these things.
And facilitate an atmosphere where the children feel that that's true for them as well.
Yeah.
100% agree. I mean, I use the word trust, but I think it's a similar, openness or trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got two children who are 18 and 19 now. So I'm sort of looking back and thinking, well, when they did not have social media until they were 13. Absolutely not, no way. That was not something that we did in our families. But I think I always escaped it slightly as well, because I know that the pressure is to have it earlier and earlier. So I don't know.
Yes, I think that's one of the hardest challenges,
children.
Because children will say, well, my friend has. And that's the thing. We kind of all need to do it together to an extent. Otherwise, you just seem like the unpopular parents that are depriving your child of something that everyone else seems to have. But I think the ABC helps me in terms of how I understand it. The A of access, just watch how much access they've got to it. B, putting in really sensible boundaries. Keep it out of their bedrooms is the key thing, as well as other things. And C, that conversation. I think the C is the most important. Just being open, honest, and having conversations with them, just to help them understand why there are dangers. Otherwise, they're going to think it's exciting. And we need to make sure they know that it's about their safety, and we're looking after them.
And when parents are boring or imposing rules, it's only because we love them, right?
Exactly. They need to hear that.
Yeah.
The why is so important. If you just tell a child not to do something, but if you say this is why, at least they understand the motive behind it. So it's important to have those conversations.
And going specifically to Wells, it was heartening for the senior management team that when the no mobile phone policy up to year 11 was brought in, it was staggeringly supported by the parents. Yeah. I was surprised at how universal that feeling was.
Why were you surprised?
Well, I guess I suppose because my young teenage son was desperate to have a smartphone, and he the first thing he wants all the time is one of his mates has a new app that I need to give him permission to get. So I was kind of, in a very gentle way, just kind of defending him from. And I was just expecting that the kind of culture of all the children always being on their phones to be something that was going to be so strong that somehow it was. I was pleasantly surprised and very glad.
I think we're seeing a bit of a tide, a change in the tide. And I think that one of the benefits of boarding school, and I speak to parents about this, that you will not be the ones to be policing their use of device. You will fall in line with whatever the school policy is. And I'm pleased to hear that you're restricting the use of devices on campus. Children don't need it. They're there to socialize, to engage with their teachers and friends. They don't need a mobile phone. But as parents, we're like, yeah, it's your problem, not ours. So I think
that's right. I think that the only parents that are struggling are the ones that actually are quite fearful, that can't get hold of their child when they need to. And we're trying to kind of just untie some of that and say, don't be fearful. We've got them. We didn't have phones 20, 30 years ago. And guess what? we found ways through it and we were absolutely fine. And even the children, I would say I was even more staggered by the lack of children tying themselves to the fence to boycott going to school because of the fact we took phones away. They feel trapped by them. And I think we're naive if we think that they think they're good for them. They just are struggling if everyone's doing it. So I think if we kind of work together universally, we'll see a really good outcome for this. Because as I say, even teenagers can see the detrimental impact that it's having on their lives and to their own friends.
I really, really hope so. Yeah. We've talked a lot about anxiety and issues and challenges of being a student. But at the end of the day, parents are paying the big bucks. Presumably, they want their children to have an excellent education. And one of the most concrete measures of that is their grades, what they get at the end of school. We have to cover it because,
I'm looking forward to this.
Parents often ask, one of the first questions that they ask us in choosing a school is, what were their grades, A and A stars at A levels, or maybe conservatoires and all of that. But what are your views, Alex?
Well, I can speak really knowledgeably about the music, but before I do that, it's important to say that Wells is not a selective school. So but that being said, our academic results are really outstanding. Musically, something I'm extremely proud of is that in the 3 years where I've been director of music, the graduates from Wells have all gone on, so 100% have gone on to the destination of their choice, whether that be universities, including Oxford and Cambridge, to read music, or their conservatoires could in the UK or abroad. And most of them have got scholarships. And most of those have got big scholarships. So on that side of things, Wells is just in a terrific place. Martin, maybe you could talk a little bit more about the kind of non-musical stuff.
We're certainly more interested in value added, which is a bit of a clunky term, but we're more interested in saying, this is your level, how high can you go? And we're going to support you through that with as little pressure as we can. In other words, we'll give you opportunities. There's a future out there. It's a competitive world. We can't escape that. Grades open doors. We know that too. And we want you to have as many doors to open as possible. So we want you to do your best and we'll help you to do that. But do we pride ourselves on the percentages? No, we have to create them and we see them. And actually, I think last year our A-level results were the best in Somerset. And we're rightfully proud of that. But we don't use it as a way of saying that's our driving force. I've said to you before that happy children are the ones that tend to be successful, but it goes in that order.
Just explain a little bit more about value added. And one of my follow-up questions is, why don't schools publish and talk about the value added as well as the A-level grades? And then maybe is that a way we can hopefully start to ask parents to move away from those league tables and look at the value added?
It's a really good question. So we like lots of schools, give them tests when they're younger, they're Alice and Yellis and that kind of thing for the year groups, so that we know roughly what their academic potential should look like. Then we know how hard to push or what we're expecting. That can only help. It's research. And then we can work out how to push them on. We have a really careful tutor system, and the tutors are the ones that know, therefore, what the likely outcomes are, what the predicted grades are, and can work with them. So if they're underachieving, we can then think there might be something going on, not to sort of force them to do more, but just to say, let's look a bit more carefully. What's going on that means you're not achieving as well as you could? And there could be multiple reasons why there aren't. But so I think if you create the right environment in a school and facilitate the right environment and culture, they finally get there. I think 80% of our A-level students last year got to the university of first choice, which is pretty good. Most of them are Russell Group universities, including, Oxbridge and music conservatoires. So our grade success is really good, but we don't want that to come at the expense of their mental health or to drive them into corners that they're not doing other things. We want them to be interested and interesting young people. And when they're 18 plus, I would rather they got ABB but had been in the choir and the football team and gone on trips and done and everything else, and rather than get AAA and have nothing else in their lives to be able to talk about.
This obsession with A's, I think we're roughly the same age. When I was that age, getting a B was actually already very good, and getting a C was actually okay. So even, it's funny, Martin, that you say, well, even if I think you said a BBA or an ABB, but what about a BBC child? Because they are out there too. Maybe they just haven't realize their potential. They haven't reached the maturity level where it's really a work ethic has kicked in or whatever. It's not saying that they're not capable, but they just didn't manage to achieve it under the age of 18.
I can't agree. I can't agree with you more there. And we are sometimes the most proud of that student that really struggled at GCSE, managed just about to even get on an A-level course and managed to get BCD, for example, which we do get every year. And we certainly don't start encouraging children not to take A-levels if we think they're going to get below a B because it might affect our grade outcomes or our percentages or what it might look like in the paper. So that's where value added comes in. We know the ones that have worked their socks off for a D grade and they're really proud of it and we're proud of them. And that will open some doors. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's the right doors for them.
I think parents sort of think, well, it's all over if my child gets a BBC or a BCD. But it isn't, is it?
Absolutely not. I mean, we know that there are people like, Richard Branson that left school early and and that kind of thing gets paraded. It's a bit stereotyped.
But that was then and this is now.
Exactly. And we're not naive to the fact that grades still matter. So there's a balance to be struck between saying, yes, they do matter. We're not going to pretend they don't. And your parents want you to achieve, and so do we. But at the same time, we value you more than your grades. And it is your personality, your strengths, your confidences that in the end will open even more doors than just your grades.
Couldn't agree more. Are you seeing more different pathways for like apprenticeships or...
We are. I mean, I think that's definitely been an increase. I wish Sally Rowley was here, our head of sixth form, who is brilliant and knows all about this stuff in chapter and verse. But yeah, we are seeing and hearing more apprenticeships and more vocational routes open up. And I think that's a good thing. I think we've been too focused on A-level grades and academic outcomes and not enough on skills and experiences and vocational things. And with the cost of university going up and up, I've got 4 children getting towards that
Not
point.
compared to independent school, though.
Well, I've got that to face now. I'm trying to work out what it's going to cost us as parents.
It's a bargain compared to independent
Is it? Well, I'm glad
school.
you said that. It's
It's
made me feel better.
10,000 something next year.
Well, thank you for saying that. But there's definitely got to be other routes that are of equal benefit, if not more, than only the university route. And that goes back to what you just said about grades, which are not everything. They work for some people and they need them, but not for everyone.
But are parents sort of falling everything you say about, skills and confidence and being happy? I mean, do you generally hear that echoed with the conversations you're having with parents?
We really do.
Yeah.
We had some really good insight from someone who came in and said to a whole group of parents, write down the 1 or 2 verbs or comments that you would say you want your child to be later on. And it wasn't A-level, success, big income, big house, cars. It was happy, confident, in good relationships.
I've been doing this for about 13 years now, and I say that all the parents we meet, they're so very different, but what unites them is exactly that. And it's happy, first and foremost. Almost every single parent would not argue that they want, the most important thing is that they want for their children to be happy.
No, and I think this generation are picking that up. I'm listening to a lot of employers saying this generation, Generation Z, I think we're talking about, since 1997, are saying no to those 80-hour week jobs that said, unless you do. They are saying, actually, we want our well-being, our life structure to be more important than working our socks off just to earn an extra for this, that, the other. That's what we're hearing anyway.
It's true, but at the same time, real life dictates that you have to get out there and earn a living.
It's like what you were saying before with life choices and saying things are too difficult, I don't want to do it.
Yeah. And if you've been told that it's okay, your happiness is, everything, and it's okay if you want to stay in your bedroom and doom scroll but it's not really, is it? This has been fascinating. We are running out of time. Is there a question that I didn't ask you? Is there something that, you're dying to share?
Crikey. I think we've done a really good job, by the way. Thank you for answering such well-rounded questions, because I think we've covered a lot of really important bases. Nothing particularly stands out that I don't think we've covered.
No, I think as long as what comes across is our passion for education, our passion for young people, our passion not just for STEM subjects but the arts. As a school that is incredibly worthwhile, and maybe our belief that academic results are incredibly important but not the be all and end all, and are supported by, as I said, value added and by creativity, then if that comes across, then I think we've done a decent job.
I totally agree. It's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much. We could talk and talk and talk for longer, but I will let you get on with your busy day. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Martin, so much.
Pleasure. Thanks ever so much for having us today.
Thanks for listening. If today's episode sparked questions, or if you're ready for support with UK boarding school admissions, we're here to help. Reach out to us at www.topschoolsadmissions.com or follow the link in the show notes. Your child's exceptional UK boarding school educational journey starts with a conversation, so let's have a chat.